the recording. Okay. So thank you so much for being here. And so we'll just start with some brief introductions. Brian, we'll start with you and then you can popcorn it around. But just a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from, undergraduate institution and degree, and your current year and roles in medical school.
Yeah. So my name is Brian. I'm currently a fourth year at Rocky Vista University, which is the one of the DO schools of Colorado, soon to be one of two, because I think I heard Greeley's starting up a DO program up there soon. Just a little bit about my background. I am from like the Denver metro area. I've been here for about 18 years. Did my undergrad at University of Denver in biology and with the concentration in cognitive neuroscience. Spent a few years working as an EMT and as a medical scribe for an ophthalmology clinic. Went up north to Fort Collins to do my master's in biomedical sciences with the concentration in human anatomy. And then went back down to Parker to do my med school for the first 2 years, and then now in Colorado Springs for my clinical years. Just in terms of some of the roles I've taken on, I was a part of the Student Government Association. I'm part of our class council, and in terms of both of those, secretary for that. Part of the Pediatric Medical Interest Group, which is sort of kind of like a joint pediatric group between CU Anschutz and RVU, and organizing students with that. So I'm the vice president of that organization. Also helped out with a little bit of mini med school as one of their coordinators, as well as taking part in the ACOP, or American College of Osteopathic Pediatricians club during my first 2 years. I will, from there, popcorn. Let's do Wianette.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wianette. Let's see, I'm from Alamosa, Colorado, if you know where that is. I would be shocked if you do. And then I did half of my undergrad at Adams State, which is in my hometown, and then I transferred and graduated from Arizona State. So big change, and that was with just a regular biology degree, and then I had a concentration in cell genetics and developmental biology. And now I am at CU in my 3rd year of medical school and taking the OBGYN path as of right now, at least. Some of the things I've done here at CU is I've been involved with student council. Let's see, I'm also part of the Pediatric Medicine Interest Group down here in Springs with Brian. That's kind of who's putting this on tonight. And there are a few other things like working in a lab, just a lot of little extras that when you get here, you will be doing as well. I will popcorn to Kate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm originally from Wisconsin, a small town in Wisconsin, and then I did my undergrad at North Dakota State University in Fargo. I majored in biochemistry and molecular biology there. I ended up taking one gap year, kind of a year to reset and apply to medical school. I worked as a dermatology scribe for that year, but I got cut short on me because it was COVID year. So I got like half of a year off unintentionally. And then, yeah, I'm currently at CU. I'm going to go into pediatrics. I really like inpatient pediatrics right now, but we'll see what actually happens after the 3 years of peds residency. And yeah, different things I'm involved in, kind of like Wianette was saying, you kind of get involved in a few little things when you get into medical school. So it's hard to like really remember which ones I'm involved in, but I do some research in family violence. I'm an on-call crisis advocate as well for family violence. I work in the Pediatric Medicine Interest Group. I also have been involved in Mission Medical Clinic, which is here in Colorado Springs, kind of in like the education path there, and volunteering. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Abby?
Hi, everybody. I'm Abby. I am also a CU third year. I'm originally from Colorado Springs, did my undergrad at TCU in Fort Worth, and then went straight through to medical school at CU. While I was in undergrad, I did work as a scribe in the emergency department. So I did that for about a year while I was finishing up my senior year at TCU. Let's see, I'm also interested in pediatrics. If you guys haven't figured that out, that's kind of how we all got linked up with you, is through our pediatrics interest group. So I'm one of the presidents of the pediatrics interest group. Other things I've been involved with, like Kate, the free clinic in Colorado Springs, Mission Medical. Also some research, which I think is pretty kind of standard. Most students will be involved in research in some capacity. And then I was an anatomy teaching assistant for the physical therapy program. So kind of have my hand in a bunch of different buckets, I guess. And I think that might be all of our students for now. Who am I missing? Oh, Tori, sorry.
Yeah,
Didn't see you there.
no worries. Hey, I'm Tori. I'm originally from California. I kind of have a non-traditional path. So I dropped out of college, I think my first semester, then ended up going back to school about 8 years later. During that time, I worked as a paramedic here in the States and overseas. And I went to College of the Canyons, which is a community college, for the first 2 years of undergrad. I transferred to UC Irvine, where I did my last 2 years, and I got involved in ultrasound, point of care ultrasound research, and then went to med school, and I'm at Vista University currently, also in the Springs with Brian. I'm a fourth year doing emergency medicine, so not pediatrics. So if anyone has any curiosities about that in particular, happy to answer any questions. Let's see, as far as med school, I was the vice president for our school. I was the global medicine officer. I'm also in our global medicine track, which is 3.5 years on top of my schooling. So I get to do several international rotations while I'm in school. So as you can see, I kind of have a theme. So I love traveling, everything related to traveling. I love point of care ultrasound. I continued research, and yeah, I think that's the gist for me.
Thank you. That is everyone. So I'll just do a few follow-up questions, and then we'll open it up to the students. So I guess the first question would be just generally, why did you decide to pursue a career in medicine, and why your specific school? So why CU or why Rocky Vista?
I can start this off. So my initial plan wasn't actually to start in med school. I actually had a pretty big intention of teaching. I actually wanted to teach high school biology for the longest time. But that sort of kind of got like, I got veered into medicine by a few of my professors. So it sort of kind of happened along that path. But one of the biggest things that I sort of kind of found with medicine is there is a large portion in which you are educating people, you're educating families, you're educating kiddos. And that's sort of kind of the piece that I've taken with throughout, is just being able to educate people along the way. So that was a big part of why I decided to do medicine. And then in terms of RVU specifically, being a pretty anatomy focused person because of my master's, and during that time thinking I wanted to possibly be an anatomy professor, I really liked the idea of being very focused on the human, just the anatomy, the musculoskeletal anatomy of a person, and seeing how that affects their daily living. So being able to tie that into my actual clinical practice, I thought was pretty important too.
I can go next. We'll just continue our little order here. For me, it kind of just felt like a calling. There was never really a plan B. I always knew I wanted to do medicine, and I always knew I wanted to be an OBGYN. I think, like Brian, I really do love the teaching aspect of it. Being, as I popped in the chat, a teacher during my gap year, it's really important to me that I do have that in my career, and we do get a lot of opportunity even as students to do that. So that's been great, and I hope to continue that in my career. There's so much that I think education can help even more than like medication itself. So also feel like healthcare is kind of in a tough place right now, and I want to be part of the generation that starts to kind of change that. All right.
Okay, I think I'm next in this little order we created on accident. Mine, I always knew I wanted to go into medicine too, but mine was more so because from a young age, I had a lot of like personal medical history going on. And I was, I guess you could say, wronged by the system quite a bit. And so ever since I was little, I was very much like, this is ridiculous. I need to go in and fix this. Like, I really like working with like more complicated patients. And I think that's also why I really like peds, because I see like little Kate and I feel like I could fix the system for like younger kids working their way up that have a little bit more of a complicated medical history.
I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in high school and trying to decide what I wanted to do as a major in college and everything. And a family friend was a social worker at Children's Hospital Colorado, and kind of set me up to do some tutoring for one of the patients who was in the cardiovascular ICU post-transplant, had essentially lived at the hospital for his whole life, and because of that was super behind in just being a kid, and so had trouble with reading, writing, math, spelling, those kinds of basic skills. And so we worked together just on kind of basic elementary school tasks for several months. And at the end of those several months, I mean, I was so attached to him and his family and had learned so much about them and what all that they had been through. And I just felt like I wanted to do more and I wanted to be more involved with people who were going through similar things. So that's kind of when I knew. Fluctuated around a little bit in college, got a little discouraged, but always kind of came back to medicine and knew that this was what I wanted to do. And then as far as why CU, I love that CU really values a variety of experiences in their class. And I think if you were to look at our medical class as a whole, there's about 160 of us, and it is so diverse and people have come from such a wide range of experiences. And I think that's something that's been really great and has certainly helped my education, is just from my classmates alone, let alone the program. So pass it to Tori.
Thanks, Abby. So I think I knew I always wanted to go into medicine, which is not, sounds like a pretty normal story, but I think I really lacked the confidence to pursue it. I think I took one semester of college and just felt overwhelmed and like maybe I don't have what it takes, and all that self-doubt kind of rolls down on you. You get one bad grade in a class and you think that's the end of that, and it's really not. I think with time you get perspective and you get through other hurdles and it gives you strength, and then you realize you can do this. It just took me a lot more years to go through it. And then I really loved it. As far as why I chose Rocky Vista, I really wanted the osteopathic skills because I work a lot overseas and you can't give someone pain medication and have them walk down the street to their pharmacy. So the osteopathic skills had a really unique purpose for me. And I want to live in Colorado because I am an outdoor freak of nature. I will camp, hike, climb, you name it, I'll go do it. So just both those combinations kind of put me at Rocky Vista University.
Thanks. Okay, so this is a follow-up question that some of you sort of touched on already. But I meet with a lot of students and they have this specialty in mind when they are pre-med. So my question would be, has your plan or area of interest changed since you first began until now?
So I'll say I have always known I wanted to work with kids. I just didn't know in what capacity. Like I said, it was something that I sort of kind of carried through with my desire to like teach kiddos. So starting med school, I thought I was just going to do general pediatrics. A little bit farther down the line, I thought, hey, I really like the neuromuscular disorders, so possibly neurology. did pretty well in the neuroanatomy sections. Why not? Going into my clinical years, I actually thought I might want to sort of kind of switch the approach and potentially do pediatric psychiatry, which would require psych first, then pediatrics. And then now I'm sort of kind of sitting at a little bit in between of adolescent medicine, which would be a classic pediatric fellowship or pediatric residency first, and then an adolescent fellowship after, which would encompass a little bit more psychiatric care for teenage kiddos. I love working with the teenage population, and it was just sort of kind of like a good culmination of everything. So everything sort of kind of changes as you see more, is what I've learned. Also sort of kind of like the idea of ophthalmology for a little bit, but essentially it was a little bit too small of an area for me to work in.
All right, I kind of already mentioned this, but no, my general specialty that I want to go into has not changed. My interests within that specialty are fluctuating, though. I think I came in wanting to do maternal fetal medicine, which is high risk pregnancies. And then now I'm kind of wanting to do like pediatric and adolescent gynecology. And I'm also loving just like the generalist life from what I've seen. So yeah, but I know a lot of classmates we're all nearing the end of our core clinical rotations in our third year who don't know what they want to do yet. So, totally fine.
I think peds was always in the back of my mind, but I came into this completely undecided, and I wanted to have an open mind going into clinicals and kind of just experience everything for what it was. And here I am choosing peds, which, like I said, was kind of always lingering there. So worked out in the end.
I was pretty indecisive. Came in thinking maybe I wanted to do something surgical. Wasn't too sure, learned pretty quickly that that's not for me. And basically through the clinical year have kind of narrowed down to what I really love, which is working with kids. And it's kind of funny reflecting on what initially got me into medicine. Probably everyone else in my life could have predicted that I would end up in pediatrics, except me. But it was really great and not at all a problem that I was undecided. It allowed me to kind of dip my toe into a bunch of different things, get a lot of a variety of experiences. And I don't think that's going to harm me in the long run. I know people have worried about like, you need to know what you want to do at the get-go because you need to have all of this research or whatever. And that is not the case. I haven't found that to be the case at all. And then, like Brian was saying, there's so much within your specialty that things might change around a little bit more. So there's really no right or wrong way to approach it. So I'll send it to Tori.
For me, choosing emergency medicine, I think it began when I was working as a paramedic for so many years. It was just kind of the natural next step. And then when I got into medical school, I think I made the rounds through almost everything with the exception of OB and peds. I was like, I can do surgery, I can do pulmonary crit care through internal medicine. Oh my gosh, I tried to be open-minded, I definitely was, but ultimately I found my home is going to be emergency medicine, despite how much I tried to get away from it. There is a fellowship option after emergency medicine. You can do toxicology, tropical medicine, ultrasound. You can do, there's international medicine, which is essentially another degree after it. So you could just keep going till your heart's content, which I like. I think part of choosing medicine for me was that I can keep going because I'm a person that just needs to chase something, and medicine is a perfect place for that. But I think I will ultimately end up doing something with tropical medicine so I can apply that overseas.
And then just like anecdotally, there have been plenty of students within our class that have transitioned from specialties that you wouldn't expect to like have any connection. One of my friends, giant jacked dude, classically emergency med kind of person, is now thinking pediatrics, and it was not a transition I expected, but I can see him doing fantastic in the field. So choosing a specialty at the beginning is not necessarily something you really need to do.
Thanks. Okay, so a final follow-up question is, has anything about medical school surprised you? And I would love it even more if you could speak on that in terms of your own self-care, your mental well-being, and how you take care of yourself in medical school.
I know people say this very frequently, but med school is hard. It's very satisfying, and I wouldn't dream of being anywhere else, but it is hard. Being able to like juggle things, I think, is a key skill you need that you learn pretty early on. It's a different type of hard, I feel like, than what you sort of kind of transition through with undergrad. And a lot of the stresses sort of kind of are not necessarily, hey, am I going to do well in this class? Hey, am I going to do well with this upcoming standardized exam? But it's more, it really differs year to year. I know first year, big part of it was, a big stress was being able to diversify myself and get involved. And that was a big part of my stress. Second year, a lot of it was more towards, hey, we have our big board exams, but how am I going to juggle my mental health with studying for the board exams? Third year, sort of similar thing, but also with rotations. A lot of it is learning how to be adaptable, and the classic, can you roll with the punches?
Yeah, I definitely second all of that. Medical school is hard, and not necessarily in the way that you would expect. Like, yes, you come into first year and it's like, you'll hear this a million times. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much information. You're trying to parse out what's important for the test, what's not. But you adjust to that, and that becomes the norm, so that's no longer really, at least for me, the biggest struggle when you get into like second year. And so even after the first semester, you kind of just, like Brian said, you adapt to it. I think the biggest surprise for me was how hard third year was going to be. And I think the thing that's been the hardest about it is honestly just that life doesn't stop while you're in medical school. So really like taking time out of your day, or at least out of your week, some days you're not going to have time for yourself, to be intentional and to take care of yourself. That's definitely key. Having a good support system. Let's see, what else have I been surprised by? I am not saying this to discourage you in any way, and I hope this doesn't come off that way, but I think I heard a lot that the hardest part about medical school was going to be getting in, and it was really hard, and it was a little, I don't know, almost like dehumanizing, and like, that's why everyone goes into first year with imposter syndrome. Like you feel like, oh my gosh, do I deserve to be here? Did they give me the call on accident? But I think, yes, that was very hard, but I don't think it was the hardest part of medical school. I will just say that, but we can all do it, and it's all going to be very rewarding, and we all love what we do every day. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I found to hold true between undergrad and medical school was that I do better and I perform better when I take the time to take care of myself. So I really make sure that I do that, even if that means less studying, because kind of as Annette was saying, life doesn't stop, and neither does your health, and neither does life, I guess, like the good things in life that are outside of medical school. And so I found it was much more beneficial to just do that instead of have an extra couple hours of studying. That was my first thing. And then my second thing that was very surprising was I think it's actually really beneficial to keep your support system that is not in medical school very strong while you're in medical school, because it's super grounding to have people that are not in medical school remind you that there's life outside of school and kind of just help you get through it and like remind you how to be a normal human too, and not talk about medicine 24/7. So definitely worth keeping those people around.
I completely agree with everything that's been said so far. I think one thing that was surprising to me was just how nice and how caring your faculty and your attendings can be. I was a little terrified to start third year, and you hear some of the horror stories about how medical school used to be and all of these things, and they'll make you cry and all of this stuff. And I think if you are honest and real with your preceptors, they will return the favor. And that has been such a great surprise, I guess. And then I think another thing that I was pretty worried about when I was an applicant was that it just seems like everyone is doing these amazing, world-changing research, like groundbreaking projects in undergrad. And once you get into medical school, one thing that was such a nice surprise was that no one knows anything. You all are going through the same drinking out of the fire hose and being exhausted and not knowing what's going on and what's a shelf exam, and no one knows anything. And I think that was a big kind of relief to me, and it definitely was some of the imposter syndrome. So as much as there's a lot of content out there on the internet or among your classmates who are also pre-med, I think at the end of the day, we all start from the same kind of level in school. So I don't know if that's comforting or not, but it was definitely a surprise to me in a good way.
Okay, I feel like this is a big question. So I think it's important to recognize that everybody has strengths and weaknesses in medical school. So like Brian doing his anatomy masters, he like slaughtered first year, and I was in there like wide-eyed, like what is happening? And it wasn't, until my third and fourth year, because of my background as a medic, that like I was my time, so everybody's going to have their time based on their history. And I advise you to like connect with people who are strong where you're weak, because I would just go to them and be like, help. I think asking for help in your moments that you need, it's really important. There's like no shame, because if you sit there and think you're strong in every aspect, you'll never grow. I think that's the most important thing, is to grow. As far as self-care, totally a big fan. Everybody does it differently based on what they need. I have to be outside. I cheat a little bit, and I'll throw my hammock up between a few trees and bring my computer and study while I'm outside. So I get to do both at the same time. And then I think it was Kate that talked about sleep. Sleep's a big deal. I have never pulled an all-nighter in all of medical school, and I've been fine. I think the one time I stayed up really late, it bit me so hard, and it was such a hard lesson. Like, you really do make your memories while you sleep. That's not just something we say. So please, like, sleep. Don't wait for things to like happen at the last minute. Not that you really can in medical school. Everything's like the last minute all the time, but sleeping's important. And the other thing I want to talk about was first year. First year is shocking, but it's shocking for everybody. Absolutely everybody's in the same boat. I think stress makes different people act different ways. So you just got to like be supportive of your peers no matter what, even if you don't always get that in return. But I think if you're supportive and you believe in yourself, you really will get there. I never thought I would be sitting here as a fourth year medical student talking to undergrads. I feel like I came to these talks when I was an undergrad, trying to find out like, what's my next step? What do I do? What do I not mess up on? And I'm on the other side, and it does happen. You just keep going and you'll get there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, that insight. So I'm going to open this up for students to ask you anything and everything related to being a pre-med and med school. Sparks asked if there's any insight into physical therapy or exercise science. These are medical students, but I'll let them answer if there is anyone who has experience in that area. But these are specific to medical school students. Okay, so we have, oh, sorry.
So in terms of, just because I have a little bit of like exposure to it, I know for physical therapy, it's technically a PhD level degree at this point. I think they changed that like about 5-6 years ago. I'm not sure what goes into that program, but that's all I know about that. In terms of exercise science, I know a lot of there's, at least for my master's program, there was a relatively large exercise science program with the research that they were doing up at CSU. From what I understand, a lot of it is very research-based or actively working within an exercise kind of scenario. That's my 2 cents.
And thank you for that question. If you want to know anything about getting into a physical therapy professional program or a DPT, that PT track, you can feel free to make an appointment with me. Emma asks, what did you do as an undergrad that you think helped your medical school application?
I'll jump on this one. I was just thinking about this, Emma. So I think a couple, like people always talk about like the research, the grades, and then like your MCAT score. But I think there's something else that can help get you in if you're weak in one of those areas, which almost everybody is, so don't panic. But I think having like a story, like in my head right now, like Brian's the peds guy at school. Like that's his, like the thing I kind of label him as, like if I just had to give him like 2 words and I couldn't remember his name. So I think if you come up with something like I'm the medic, Leonette, what's your like go-to reference? What do people call you? Does anyone call you like the thing?
I think I'm just known as like the OBGYN girl.
There
Like,
you go.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think like if you can, whatever it is that you're doing, like maybe you, I don't know, maybe you volunteer at a shelter or something, then you're like, oh, the shelter kid, like I remember him and I liked him, and it just makes it something memorable in somebody's mind.
I completely agree with that. I think the best thing that I did in undergrad was the things that I did for fun. So when I was an undergrad for 4 years, I worked for our football team and I helped with recruiting and I gave tours to prospective student athletes. And that came up in my application essays. It came up in interviews. I spent one complete interview talking about football. That was at CU, and now I'm here. So I think it was just, like Tori said, it was something that was unique to me and something that we could talk about that has a lot more to do with who I am as a person than it has to do with who I am as student Dr. Thorne. So
I also think a big part of it is to be be personable. I feel like a lot of times people are very focused on the actual like content of, hey, I need to know X pathway, Y disease, Z something else, Z medication. The thing is, that's going to come with time and just being in that clinical setting. What a lot of people don't really focus on is, hey, is this person actually a person? Or are they just like a walking robot that you don't really want to interact with? What I noticed with a lot of my interviews was they focused on why, not necessarily the medicine portion, but why I don't want to repeat like what people were saying, but why you are unique. And I feel like a lot of that comes out with personality.
I totally agree. I think I definitely did not stand out on paper in any way. And other than like maybe age, but yeah, I think where I shined and why I got into medical school is probably my essays and definitely my interview. And on that subject, I don't know that I would suggest, and chime in if you guys feel differently, I don't know that I would suggest doing a ton of interview prep. I think go in and be yourself. At least that's the route that I took. And it was a lot more organic and it flowed a lot better than I think if I would have like super rehearsed answers to potential questions. But like I was laughing in my interviews and like it felt very natural. And then by the time I got accepted, aside from imposter syndrome, I was confident that like they thought I had the personality of a doctor. So highly encourage really just being yourself.
I always viewed the things that everyone tells you have to do in undergrad. So like you're volunteering, you're shadowing, that kind of thing. I always viewed those as check boxes. And then everything else that I had on my application was completely what I wanted to do and what made me a better person at the end of the day and more well-rounded. And kind of like how everyone was saying, I was never asked about my shadowing opportunities. I was never really asked about my research in interviews. It was always about like the unique volunteer experience I did that had literally nothing to do with medicine. And I just did it because I wanted to do it. So if you can take one piece of advice, just do what you want to do and what's going to make you a better person at the end of the day, because it makes you more well-rounded and makes you easier to talk to, and it'll make you a better doctor in the long run.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Kate said, because I think that was like, you guys both covered that's super important to have something, because everybody applying looks the same on paper. Like everybody's got good scores and everybody, joined their pre-med club, and like, what's the thing that's different? I had a nonprofit overseas, and I threw my YouTube video into my application just to be different, just something that makes you unique.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Travis says, can anyone briefly discuss their experiences studying for USMLE or complex and getting ready for residency? What makes you competitive for ortho surgery?
I'm going to speak for Allie.
Yeah, I was like,
Brian?
one of our friends is also thinking ortho.
Yeah, so ortho is one of the specialties because it's subspecialty surgery. You have to have all your scores in line. So I would start with just your MCAT, like focus just on what's right in front of you, because if you're looking a mile down the road, you won't get there if you miss what's right in front of you. So like if you do well on your MCAT and you take the time to study, it will serve you for the next test and the next test and the next test, because it does build. So if you just do well with what's right in front of your face every single week, it'll automatically be there for you, because I think scores is really where it's at. And then if you speak football is kind of what we laugh about. So do you speak football? Hockey? Perfect.
I do, yep.
If you're just personable, can hang, it's very, Brian, how do I say this? Like bro-ish.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of broy.
It is, but we have a
arms
really
hurt.
awesome chick doing it, and she's amazing and really tough, and like doesn't take anything personally, and does well in school, and yeah, you'll be fine.
Just in terms of studying for board exams, I know a lot of schools give a dedicated period of time for you to study. So I know for our school at RVU, we at least got a month or around a month to study for both USMLE and Complex 1, as well as USMLE and Complex 2. Depending on your school will also depend on what exams you take and what is like mandatory in terms of just your actual, what was necessary for graduation for you. Also, there's a lot of resources. Sorry to cut you short or cut into you, Leonette, but I know you'll run into it when you get there, but oh shoot, I'm blanking. UWorld is like a very common one that a lot of people use. I would say prior to med school, I wouldn't focus too much on getting prepared for boards. I feel like a big part of boards is you are getting prepared by focusing on your actual study at that time.
Yeah, I think for Kate and Abby and I, we're in a little bit of a different situation. We haven't taken any of our boards yet. We're the first class from CU to take both of our boards after our core clinical year. So we are in the next couple months going to be coming up on our dedicated study period, which is a good lengthy amount of time. But I'll be honest with you, if there was one thing that I wish I would be doing that I have not been doing at all throughout medical school is like longitudinal studying, like doing a few questions a day to remind me of like the basic science stuff that I'm not focusing on now that I'm in the clinical world. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not doing that and I'm not worried about it either.
Okay. Catherine asks, you may have touched on this, but do you have any tips for like the uber competitive nature of the application process, making it seem like getting in is next to impossible? Just, I think, reiterating too that leaning into what you love is going to make you a better person, not only in the interview and the application, but also just for your own self-care. So I would just touch on that again, but anything else?
I can start with this one. I kind of approached everything with the application process. Like I'm going to be exactly who I am. And I was super open and vulnerable with every single essay that I wrote. And I was just 100% me when I interviewed as well. And I approached it like that because I was like, well, then I know that whatever school accepts me for who I am. And like I'm like actually meant to be at that school, like we're a good legitimate match. And I think if you approach it that way rather than like, oh, like maybe I'm not good enough, but approach it as like, I know I'm good enough, I need to figure out what school matches me best and what school is going to fit me best to make these 4 years as good as they can be. It takes a lot of that pressure off and you end up a lot happier in the long run because you end up at a school that you love, and I love CU. So
I completely agree. I think in the pre-med period, no one thinks they're going to get in. Like you're just worried and stressed out, and the process is pretty grueling. And so you kind of burn out too. And I think the best thing you can do is just try to tune out all of the noise and just try to do what you can do. And if that means leaning into the things that you love and focusing on volunteering and other things that are not strictly medical related or hardcore research, or if that's what you love, then do that. But I think there's a lot of like the pre-med world is a lot of people loving to tell you their scores on things and all the things that they've been doing. And I think as much as you can tune it out, it's really hard. But you know, my classmates and myself, like we've all come from a wide range of experiences and test scores and research projects. And so I wouldn't worry too much about what you see online or what you're hearing from your classmates, because at the end of the day, like, you know, you're all going to be doctors if you want to be.
I also think another good part is finding a group of people that aren't so hyper fixated on things like scores, and sort of kind of fostering more of a mentality of how can I help other people rather than how can I beat other people. I know that's sort of kind of what I focused on a lot during first year because everybody's struggling during first year. We all need help in some way, shape, or form. It's just how can we help other people during periods where they might not necessarily be doing well, can eventually lead to them helping you during periods where you're struggling. So a lot of that collaborative effort is something that I sort of kind of saw during my first few years of med school.
Yeah, I wanted to give some examples of some of our classmates that got in, and they're totally different people just because I don't know who our audience is. We have a friend who was a dance major. She's like a very petite, calm, blonde girl who like rocks some rap hip hop moves, and she created like a nonprofit off of this. I think that's a really good example of like leaning into your passion. And that was her major, was dance. And then she had all the prereqs and she's like awesome. Another one is somebody with a huge background in the military and was active duty for over 10 years. And he did probably not saying this right, but like the ambulance side of the Army. and got in that way. And then we have another gentleman who was Avalanche Rescue. He was an advanced EMT, and him and his dog Wally would go rescue people in avalanches. And he used to teach my school's wilderness week. And that's how we met some of our students and got in. So that's just some stories of like totally different backgrounds of people who just leaned into who they are and wrote all of that out and explained it. And it went really well for them.
Okay, so Erin asks, how well do you maintain your hobbies during your school years? Like, do you have a life at all?
If you're intentional about it, yes. If you're not intentional about it, it will never happen.
Speaking on that, I feel like it's very easy to get super like in the weeds of studying and not remembering to actually do the things you like. So one of the things during third year, I actually got involved with my partner was a lot of disc golfing, aka all those over there, and doing things outdoorsy that I sort of kind of neglected myself from doing for a while. So blocking out times that you can actually do things you enjoy.
Yeah, I totally second that. Every day on my calendar, I try to block out time for myself. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I really make an effort to do that. And there are going to be times during medical school where you have a lot more time to do those things, and then times during medical school where you'll have less time for yourself, and it'll just kind of ebb and flow like that. You just kind of have to roll with the punches. But yeah, definitely second all of that. Be intentional, schedule your time for yourself. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
One thing that I really felt as an undergrad was that I couldn't say no to doing more research, more extracurriculars, more to try to build this resume, which I think is somewhat the nature of pre-med. And one thing that's great about medical school is that I have felt for the first time that you can really pick and choose how involved and how much you want to be doing based on your career goals. And that means that if it's more important to you to have time to yourself and to take a day off and to go spend time with the people that you love, then you should do that. And it's going to be okay. And if it's more important to you to spend that time and take 4 hours and study for an exam, then you should do that. And I think some of those external pressures of feeling like you just need to pile everything on, they do still exist in medical school, but I also think you can look at the bigger picture and say, well, what do I need really for my career goals? And what do I need for my life and myself? And I think it has taken on new meaning, and I have felt actually like I'm better able to prioritize some of the other things just based on what I want to do long term.
Yeah, I agree with Abby. I think I magnified my hobbies sadly in med school. I think they do ebb and flow. So there's times leading up to a test where that's pretty much all you do is prepare for that exam. But then after the test, it's like everybody we either go out together or exercise or go snowboarding, or, you know, everybody has like looking forward to that time that they're gonna take, even if it's not regular. And then the other piece of advice I got going in, which I'll pass on to you because it worked out for me, is to exercise. Even if you're not like a super power lifter or anything, but like you just go on walks or whatever it is, but you got to get like away. So like I would study through dinner and then put everything down for 45 minutes and go on a walk or go to the gym. So I think you should keep up whatever it is you probably already do.
Okay, so we have about 8 minutes left. I'm just going to have one final question, and you may reiterate something that we've already discussed, but if you could give one final piece of advice to these pre-med students, thinking back to when you were that young, fresh pre-med, what would that piece of advice be?
I think I would say just don't give up. the application process, like we have said, can be very grueling, and you can get a little defeated if you get in your head, for sure. But one, it's very common to have to apply more than once. Very common. Don't let that get you down. And two, if this is really what you want to do, you're going to do it. You're going to make it one way or another. You will.
Piece of advice I got during my master's was be where your feet are, aka be in the present. Don't look too far ahead in the future. Don't ruminate in the past too much, but enjoy what you're currently seeing and make the most of what you're actually doing right now. Be it trying to take in as much as you can with what you're studying right now, be it enjoying the relationships that you have currently. Just be in the present.
Mine would be to really take the time to sit down and look at how you want your life to look in the future, and be really specific about the details, like who you want to be in your life, what you want your job to look like, how your work-life balance is, et cetera, et cetera. And then however you want it to look, just go and do that and don't second guess it once, because kind of like Wionette was saying, if you want it bad enough and that's what you want to happen in your life, then it will.
I would say to try not to worry about the things you cannot control, which are what your classmates, what people online are doing, which are the decisions that are being made from schools where you think for sure you're going to get an interview and it doesn't happen. It's all going to be okay. Just like Wionette said, if this is really what you want to do, you will find your path and you will make it there. And I wish I had pulled out less hairs worrying about things that really I couldn't do anything about.
This, just to be a little bit different, maybe this has already happened to you and I'm sorry if it has, but like at some point in your journey, somebody that you either care about or whose opinion you hold highly or who holds a title that you think means something, somebody will tell you you can't do it for whatever reason. It will hurt because it will be somebody that like you revered or you think knows whether or not you can or can't do something. At the end of the day, no one knows you better than you. So you have to respectfully tell them to shove it and get on with your life and trace those goals down. I think probably everybody here, because I see nods, has had somebody like a counselor or a professor, or a parent or a friend who probably meant well but said something hurtful. You got to look it down and do it anyways.
That's not pre-med advice. That's just general life advice. That was amazing. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your really, really busy schedules to speak with these students. And on behalf of UCCS, myself, and the College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences, we were so happy to have you. Y'all are awesome. I feel like I learned a lot. I'm not going to med school, but thank you so much.
And then just to like, what is this phrase? Extend an olive branch. If anybody like has any additional questions, I know a lot of us are very open to answering more questions, even outside of this Zoom call. So if anything, I'll put my email in the chat just for people that are interested in like additional questions or like any additional mentorship opportunities. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay, students, write those emails down. All right, logging off, everyone. Thank you again so much, and it was great to hear from you. Thanks for all the students who attended. Bye.